All right, welcome everyone to the latest edition of the Data Resilience SpectrumCast. As you can see, we have a host of folks here with us today. You'll notice our illustrious colleague, Randy Arsenault, is literally in the dark today with all the weather we've been having in New England. He's without power, so good luck today, Randy, in getting all that back. But still joined by our illustrious colleagues and subject matter experts, Trisha Jang. Morning, Trisha.
Morning.
And Sean Sperry. Sean, thanks for joining us.
Peace.
And today we have Greg Van Heijs and Del Hubler from the product teams on IBM's Data Resilience. Welcome, guys.
Thanks, Steve. Great to be here.
Great to have you guys. So what we wanted to do today is something a little bit different. Normally, we pick up a topic and we talk about that particular topic, and it doesn't necessarily have to focus specifically on IBM product, but issues focused around data resilience within the industry and how you might think about resolving them. Today, what we want to do is we want to talk a little bit about what's new and what's coming up within the data protection portfolio at IBM with regard to our Spectrum Protect and Spectrum Protect Plus products. Del and Greg are going to take us through some of these things. So without further ado, let's start off with you, Del. Del, why don't you give us a little overview of what's new in the IBM Data Resilience portfolio?
Yeah, be happy to do that for you guys. So first, let's talk about IBM Spectrum Protect in the IBM Cloud Marketplace. So what we've done is we've taken IBM Spectrum Protect, made it so you can automatically get it deployed within the IBM Cloud Marketplace. So you can go to the Cloud Marketplace, single click button deployment automatically installs Spectrum Protect based on blueprints, does all the installation, does all the configuration. So what does that mean? That means the customer does not have to worry about partitioning out volumes, need to figure out how to set up the cloud connections. It will do all the connections and the configuration for installing a Spectrum Protect server in the IBM Cloud, just ready to ingest workloads. So significantly reducing the time to value for that, making it so you can click the button and within an hour or so be able to have a running Spectrum Protect server without having to worry about configuring and provisioning anything for you. So very, very powerful. The second thing I want to talk about is multi-target replication. So the next couple of things I'll be talking about have to do with Spectrum Protect coming out very, very soon, like in a month or two. So multi-target replication, this is probably one of the most powerful features we've introduced in quite some time within Spectrum Protect. And it's very, very timely in the sense that cyber resilience that Steve and Trisha and you have been talking about for so long, the bad guys are trying to get access to our data. So we need not just, back to Steve's 3-2-1-1 rule, we need another way to create a copy of data. Now, today, Spectrum Protect has the ability to create a copy of data from one place to another, and you can create another copy on a different media type. But wouldn't it be great if you could create a copy in two different places? So let's say I have my Spectrum Protect server in Tucson, Arizona, and I want to create a copy over in San Jose and another copy up on cloud. So what this enables us to do is it gives us the ability to do concurrent replication to two different sites at once. So now I've got not only my primary backup data, but my secondary and my tertiary copy of data, making it so the attack vectors are minimized for those ransomware capability, the ransomware attackers. Very, very powerful.
Should we ask some questions? So Del, here's the thought that's running too. We're pretty informal in this SpectrumCast, as you well know. So I'll tell you the question that's running through my mind right now. I don't know if you have an answer to it or not. These sound like really powerful things, right? I can put the multi-site replication together now with running in the cloud. I just click the button and I have that third instance of Spectrum Protect ready to go to accept that data. The only thing I worry about now is paying the bill for that third instance that comes from the IBM Cloud folks, right? Do you know if there are any tools that might, I'm assuming there are, that might help me estimate how much that would cost to have such thing, or is that more an IBM Cloud question?
Yeah, so one of the it's a great question. I don't have a calculator right handy, but what I can tell you is that the development team has gone through extraordinary measures to reduce the price, meaning they've taken a look at the ingestion workloads, they've looked at the total managed capacity, and they've figured out what's the cheapest, most inexpensive way to protect this data to still meet the SLAs of the client. So what they've done is they've taken the guesswork out of that for you. And so while I don't have a calculator right at my fingertips, what I will tell you, we went through extraordinary measures to try to make sure whatever you do deploy takes your input, your daily ingest loads, and your total managed capacity, and try to make it so that that bill you do get is as cheap as possible. And I just don't have the information available, but I'm sure there's a way to go get those estimations for you.
I mean, it's one of the questions that just with the cloud in general, right? It's a very tempting value proposition, right? If you're not starting with a lot of workload, but Spectrum Protect is one of those things where generally you're moving a lot of data and doing a lot of workload, particularly if it was a third instance, right? Or you already have that. So, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's a great question, Sean. And if anybody can figure out the perfect way to do economics on cloud, then
let us know.
Yeah, that is a really tough one. All right, let's talk about retention set to cloud. So this is another new exciting capability we're introducing here in a couple of months. For most of you, you know what retention sets are for. Optimize ways to store data in long-term data retention. Now, we built these very specifically to make it extremely optimized as far as your daily backups, of course, can be converted, some of them, into long-term data retention copies without having to ingest the workload again. That's why we introduced retention sets. We added the capability to write retention sets to tape in prior releases, but what we're releasing here in a couple of months is the ability to write retention sets to object storage. Super powerful for two reasons. Number one is you can lower your costs for long-term data retention by storing it in things like S3 and Azure. But you can now also target IBM Cloud Object Storage Archive tier and Amazon Glacier and Deep Glacier. So super low cost targets for that long-term retention data. Again, we're all about lowering costs for managing data protection. So we're trying to find the most efficient, lowest cost alternatives to be able to store that data. Long-term retention data doesn't need to be restored in a couple of seconds, right? But it needs to be able to be restored. Like Steve Keniston, he breaks his arm. We need to keep his x-ray for the lifetime of the patient. So I need to be
forever.
Forever, effectively, because Steve's going to live forever. Our SpectrumCast guru is going to live forever. But retention sets the cloud brings the capability to our clients to help continuing to optimize the cost for long-term retention data by allowing you to store it in very deep tiers of object storage.
And there's a couple things I found really interesting about those retention set copies is that, first of all, it will rehydrate the data just like we do to tape. So that kind of gives you the assurance that you're not going to have to worry about retrieving all those individual little extents. Everything will be brought back as a whole. And I also found it interesting, this whole concept of a delayed, if I put it into Glacier or Deep Archive, that I might have to submit the request for it to be brought back and then wait maybe even a day before I can actually access that from the cloud, just because, like you said, it is truly a slower, cheaper process.
That's right, Tricia. Two great points to take note of, right? And Tricia will have a YouTube video that goes into more details as soon as it's available. As you know, Tricia and Sean create some great videos for that. But yeah, great points, Tricia. Thank you for bringing those up.
It's frozen, right? You ought to have a picture of an icon, a little ice cube melting while you're waiting for it to come back.
Yeah, I'm sure Steve's always pulling these really cool rabbits out of his hat. I'm sure he'll do something. All right, let's talk about the final thing that I wanted to talk about, and that is OpenSnap Store Manager. We like to call it awesome for Spectrum Protect. Now, what is OSSM? All right, so I think most of you know we have Spectrum Protect, we have Spectrum Protect Plus, And one of the key things I keep hearing is, boy, I really like Spectrum Protect Plus on how easy it is for agentless data protection, for full RBAC capabilities, for some of the new workloads it protects. But what I'd really like, Dell, is to be able to store that into my trusted Spectrum Protect data repository. So I don't need to go build vSnap servers for those cases where I've already built my infrastructure around Spectrum Protect servers. What can you do, Dell and team, to be able to enable me to leverage Spectrum Protect Plus and all its power and store it into my Spectrum Protect server? Well, that's what OSSM is. What we've done is we created a gateway into Spectrum Protect, and it's a software-based snapshot capability. So you can think of it as a vSnap repository sitting right on top of Spectrum Protect. So really, really cool. So what this is going to enable you to do is protect those and start leveraging Spectrum Protect Plus and store it right into your true and tested and fully highly scalable Spectrum Protect container pools. So really, really cool there. So it also enables you to do mount-based access. So why would I want to mount-based access my data? Well, data accessibility and availability is key. I mean, Steve's covered this numerous times. Being able to get access to your data, really critical for a whole lot of different use cases, analytics, ransomware detection, data reuse, DevOps, whatever that is. And so this is also going to enable you to mount those backups directly to be able to leverage them for all those use cases and data reuse scenarios we talked about, really enabling you to capture the value of that backup data for many reasons, cyber resiliency, DevOps, et cetera, et cetera. So we're really excited about this. We're going to have a tech preview here in a couple of months, and then we'll look at a production version of that in the first half of next year.
And will that be, when you say container storage pools, is that going to be directory container or directory and cloud container storage pools?
Yeah, so it'll be both, right? So you'll be able to leverage the capabilities of both directory and cloud container storage pools. From the front end, it looks like just an immutable file system, right, with software-based snapshot capabilities. On the back end, you're going to be able to leverage all the power of everything Spectrum Protect has, the cloud container pools, the directory container pools, the replication, and eventually the retention sets. And we'll talk more about how that build out looks, but generally speaking, you'll be able to take all the power of Spectrum Protect.
And will that be both my Spectrum Protect Plus and Spectrum Protect data going into the same container so I get dedupe across all of that, or how will that work?
Yeah, that's a great point. So there's probably reasons where you want to combine that stuff and reasons that you don't want to do that, but it will be able to leverage the capabilities of that deduplicated catalog and storage pool to put all that stuff together into a single thing.
Nice.
Oh, thanks so much for going over those key elements that we're going to be introducing within both Protect and Protect Plus. That's fantastic. Tricia, Sean, I'm super glad you guys just kind of cut in there and asked some key questions, because that's clearly what our customers are going to be asking about. Any other thoughts or questions around some of the things that Dell's talking to us about today?
With the multi-site node replication, I think it's also really interesting that we're making it so that it's now kind of like a storage rule, which makes the replication a lot easier to add in different nodes and file spaces. So I really like that feature as well. I think that kind of streamlines how we do our node replication.
Yeah, so one thing, so Tricia, thanks for bringing that up. One of the things that maybe some of the other competitors don't have that we do really well, and that is we allow very, very surgical replication. And what do I mean by that? We enable you to be very granular on what you replicate where. It's easy to say, oh, I want a copy of my data everywhere, all of my data. And you can do that with storage replication, but that's not economical. Sean hinted on it earlier. It's like, it comes down to cost in the end. So one of the things that we've done is made sure that the replication technologies that we have are very, very flexible and granular, so that you can make it so that you only replicate the data that you need to and have it available where you need to. Again, optimizing costs for your overall data protection strategy.
Thank you very much, Dell. Dell, any other thoughts you wanted to add? Or, we appreciate what you're sharing with us today.
No, I'm just really happy to be here, Steve. Always happy to join this crew. You guys do a great job, and I'll come back anytime you want.
Great.
It's some
Hey,
cool
Greg,
stuff. We need to get you to develop some more stuff. You need to start coding, man.
Okay. Well, they stopped letting me code a while ago, so we're good.
All right, Greg, we're putting you on the hot seat now. As everyone knows, right, the big evolution and what's happening within everyone's infrastructure is this migration to containers. And 2 years ago, we made this introduction around our data resilience solutions available for the container world. Greg, you've been heavily involved in how we're taking our data resilience capabilities developed specifically within Protect Plus and really driving those to kind of help meet customer demands as this evolution quickly grows and changes and evolves. Why don't you take us through some of the new things that we're doing within Protect Plus to help us in the container world?
Yeah, right on, Steve. Hey, yeah, thanks a lot for having us here. Yeah, like you said, 2 years, gosh, and I think if we roll forward to what Dell was talking about in 2 months, that'll be 6 releases of our container support that we've been iterating on, right? And so strong foundation, protecting PBCs, Kubernetes resources, and I'll say focused primarily on today on on-prem deployments. And then what we'd like to talk to you about today is going forward with our release coming out at the end of the year. We're introducing public cloud support, and specifically for Microsoft Azure is where we're targeting our initial support to be able to protect Red Hat OpenShift workloads running there, and specifically using Red Hat ODF storage to be the storage layer as part of that. And so you'll see us introducing that, and then we want to rapidly build out and that support to other public clouds. But experience says what I've seen is OpenShift has, I'll say primarily the majority of deployments today are on-prem, but you pick that other 30-40% of OpenShift deployments are public cloud. Azure is certainly up there on the list, as well as we'll be looking at AWS. So that's what we're introducing with our next release, focusing on Azure. And also, specifically, what we'll be doing is having the in-place storage snapshots. And like Dell was talking about OSSM and vSnap, we'll be able to copy that data out to a vSnap repository that's running on on Azure, or introduce the second part of our support that we'll be going to is also looking at providing direct to object support, right? As far as when we go to look at Microsoft Azure support, we've heard from a number of cloud administrators or some of the Cloud Pak folks, exactly, specifically too, that we've been talking to. They may not necessarily want to, I'll say, really become a backup administrator and deal with administering backup storage, monitoring, managing capacity of that. They would rather, in that environment, use the cloud infrastructure services that are available, right? So being able to do the in-place storage snapshots and then directly copy that data to object storage. And so that's the other part of the enhancements that we're looking at for our release at the end of the year, is kind of targeting that cloud administrator and allowing them to be able to use the cloud infrastructure for both those in-place storage snapshots as well as copying the data directly out to Azure Blob in the Microsoft Azure case. And then we'll also want to be looking at that direct to object support, being able to add Amazon S3. You'll see us be able to target Amazon S3 support as well as IBM Cloud. And so you can kind of think one, that Microsoft Azure use case, and then the on-prem use cases with Spectrum Protect Plus today, being able to directly go into IBM Cause or to be able to send that stuff up to Amazon S3. We'll be able to allow those targets as well for our object storage support.
Is that object storage support only for the Red Hat stuff to begin with, or can my normal Spectrum Protect backups go direct to object storage?
Right. So what we'll be introducing here is specifically for containers, and that would be for the OpenShift Kubernetes support. Longer term, we would be looking at that for other workloads, but for our release later this year, it's specifically tied to the container support. All right.
Greg, thanks a million. Oh, sorry, Sean, go ahead.
I was going to ask Greg and Dell, and this is a good question for both of you guys. I know we're doing agile development, right? So we're not necessarily releasing everything at the same time as we used to do when we had these huge releases. But how do we pick the the cloud platform that we do first? I'm curious, why Azure first and why not AWS or IBM Cloud, if there's a good answer for it?
Sure. So I would say from my perspective, when we're looking at it from a container support, if you look at the OpenShift adoption across AWS, IBM, and Azure, it's somewhat evenly split. I would say Amazon and Azure are pretty close, right? Plus minus. And we see a lot of synergy with our Spectrum Protect customers and Azure specifically. Certainly not to say Amazon isn't way up there as well, but personally, anecdotally, I have seen more requests for Azure first, and that's where we're targeting.
So it kind of sounds like it's a market share plus how it mixes with our customers for many of these decisions, right?
Yeah, for this container support, absolutely, that's right. And we certainly want to do IBM as well, right? And I'll certainly, but just kind of going after the adoption patterns for cloud packs and public cloud adoption, it kind of pointed us that way.
And that brings up two things. First of all, I heard that we're doing more with the operator-based deployment for our agents, and I think that's great. And that definitely addresses the administrator, making their life a lot easier. Anything you want to say to that?
Yeah, it's a great point, Tricia, and a couple comments, right? So I kind of was, I'll say, getting a few of the high level, the key items that we're adding, the Azure support. But to your point, there's a lot more when you kind of pull the covers back a little bit, what we're doing at the end of this year. We're doing a number of deployment improvements. To your point, we have an operator-based deployment of the SPP server today, kind of, I'll say, doing it the OpenShift way, and we're adding that for the BAS agent as well, right, for our agent code that's deployed in there. So we'll have an operator-based deployment for that. And we're also working on improvements, I'll say, on the time to value, right? In other words, we have targets like pick about 15 minutes where we want to be able to deploy an SPP server and our BAS agent into an OpenShift cluster. So you're going to see some deployment improvements as well as an operator-based deployment for the agent. And actually, just kind of get me going.
How does the introductory?
Yeah.
How does the introductory of the Red Hat Marketplace also enter into that? Does that mean I can just grab it from Red Hat Marketplace? It's easy to install with the agent.
Yeah, great point, Tricia. And actually, there's a couple of these things, kind of was targeting or talking a little bit about what we have coming out at the end of the year. Today, you can go to the Red Hat Marketplace and find Spectrum Protect Plus. And so today we have, when you go there, you'll be able to get the operator-based deployment for the SPP server, a Helm deployment for the agent. It's a paid version today. What you'll see us doing is revving on that, to add our operator-based deployment for the agent going forward, as well as, not in the end of this year timeframe, but if you look at the first part of next year, we want to look at a free offering there as well for a trial, a free trial offering, right? Today it's a paid offering, but we want to introduce that trial version as well.
Greg, I want to bring something up. First of all, I want to thank both of you guys for coming on the show today and being able to talk about some of the new things coming up before the end of the year here, so that folks can think about, as they're making those strategic decisions moving into the end of the year, what capabilities do I want to be able to take advantage of? Or what is IBM offering? Greg, you alluded to something, and you and Tricia were kind of talking about this, but I think it's very important to bring up. Within the data protection industry these days, it's not just about, as protection is evolving and moving into this container-based workload, it's not just the IT administrator whose responsibility it is, or whose job it is, or is going to be to protect the information. In addition, one of the things that we've prided ourselves on at IBM within our protection portfolio is the ability to reuse data. And IT certainly isn't reusing the data. It's the lines of business that are. And you've talked about some strategic things that we've done within the data protection solution set that, especially for containers, that enable these folks like the DevOps folks and the other knowledge workers who need access to the data. Any comments on that?
Yeah, boy, that could... Yeah, I agree, Steve. Right. I mean, we're seeing, to me, two fundamental adoption models with our solution. One is, I'll say kind of the traditional central IT focus deployment, where we want to be able to manage the objective is to manage OpenShift just like any other workload, right? Like VMware, like bare metal, et cetera. Have that consolidated management interface, a common SLA-based management of all those workloads, right? That's kind of our bread and butter. But if you also look at kind of, I'll say on the other side of that pendulum, that DevOps crowd, you know, they may be looking more at selecting a specific solution optimized for their OpenShift kind of environment, right? And that's where, you know, not to go too far today, but you know, Spectrum Fusion is optimized for that OpenShift deployment model and that DevOps crowd, right? That really wants to have that type of deployment. So we're really looking at two adoption models. I would say that we're seeing the central common management and also an OpenShift DevOps optimized workloads that, you know, Spectrum Fusion is really going after with that.
Great. Thanks, Greg.
Mm-hmm.
Team, I want to thank you both, and I want to leave you with two thoughts. Number one is, as Greg was just talking about, we speak to a lot of customers, especially the IT folks in our existing customer base, who tell us, they're not really sure about what's going on with containers, but I just need traditional backup. But other folks within IBM who are in other parts are talking to customers, and there's a huge container things going on within their organization. So I encourage you to reach out to others in your organization to find out exactly what is taking place with containers, and then think back to how you're taking advantage of the IBM portfolio and the things that we're doing within the portfolio to help you, the customer, help your constituency within your organization really do the things they need to do around protection and data reuse within the organization. That's number one. Number two, I want to pony off of all the things that Del talked about. And while this is a 30-minute podcast and we're not going too deep into a lot of these things, there's a lot of great capabilities that we're offering up within this new release. So whether you're working with an IBM seller or an IBM business partner, please reach out to them and make sure you get any latest and greatest update about things that you heard that are interesting. Because as you said, we did the best we could without going into a lot of depth and detail, but there are a lot of good things that can be that you can take advantage of for your company as we move forward. So with that, I just want to open it up. Any last thoughts or questions? All right, I want to thank everyone. I want to thank you, Greg, Greg and Del, for coming on. I appreciate it. And until next time, we'll talk to you later. Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.